On May 20th of 2014, a podcast named The Biggest Problem in the Universe made its debut. This show was hosted by internet personalities Maddox and Dick Masterson and was based around the concept of ranking all the problems in the world. This podcast was considered by many, myself included, to be one of the greatest podcasts that had ever existed, and it quickly amassed a tremendous, rabidly dedicated fan base. The show lasted for 107 episodes before the hosts split less than amicably, leaving them to go on to new projects. However, despite the death of the podcast, its iTunes feed would live on, leading to what I consider to be one of the greatest moments in internet trolling. This is the story of that iTunes feed. A couple weeks ago, Dick Masterson violated Maddox so intensely, so thoroughly, that I'm hard-pressed to find anything else to compare it to. This was perhaps the greatest comeuppance that I've ever been witness to, and I just hoped that there was some way to explain this to people that you could fully appreciate it even if you haven't been following the drama for the past 4 years. Then I remembered, that's literally what I do on this channel. And note that this is not yet another video on the $20 million lawsuit. You know, the one that... although it did cause Asterios to lose his job. Now, I have 3 other videos about that, and they're really good videos, so you should watch them if you haven't. But for the sake of this story, I want to focus on the smaller, less talked about lawsuit. The fight for the ownership of the biggest problem in the universe. Let's start at the end. On May 31st of 2016, the final episode of The Biggest Problem in the Universe was published. Conspicuous by his absence was Dick Masterson, who wasn't on the show and wasn't even among the people who Maddox thanked. The fans were really curious about what was going on here, but both Dick and Maddox weren't giving any answers. A week later, on June 7th, 2 new podcasts made their debut. Maddox made The Best Debate in the Universe, and Dick Masterson made The Dick Show. And shortly after, fans of the old podcast noticed something strange. So, my iTunes feed for The Biggest Problem in the Universe has now been changed to The Biggest Debate in the Universe, and all the old Biggest Problem episodes have been removed from iTunes. Maddox is literally forcing his podcast on anyone who's still subscribed to the old show's feed. Fuck you, Maddox. On a side note, Dick's show is the shit and he didn't need to sneak it into my iTunes feed. Funny that he was super indignant about YouTube forcing their album on iPhone users. Come on, Maddox. Hey, I know that guy. So Maddox had deleted the old episodes of The Biggest Problem in the Universe from the iTunes feed and made sure that everyone who was already subscribed was getting his new podcast. This meant that Maddox was starting off from where they left off, while Dick had to start from square one. And the stealing of the iTunes feed for his new podcast was something that apparently friends of Maddox had advised him against doing. And it makes a lot of sense why people who had his best interests in mind wouldn't want him to do this. For starters, it was something that would confuse and piss off fans of the old show who at this point still liked Maddox. Doing something like this could also be perceived as defrauding sponsors by having inflated numbers. I don't know any of the details of sponsorship deals that Maddox has had on the show, but that's always a risk when you do that kind of thing. And there's a third reason why you wouldn't want to do something like that, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. You see, I think at this point, Maddox truly felt that he was in the right and he was completely entitled to do what he did. When the original podcast began, Maddox definitely had a much bigger fan base than Dick Masterson did. I think there's a good chance that he saw the show not so much as The Biggest Problem in the Universe with Maddox and Dick Masterson, but The Maddox Show with Maddox and the other guy. Doesn't really matter who the other guy is because everyone's here for Maddox, right? But what he didn't account for was that over the course of 2 years, 107 episodes, 18 bonus episodes, the fans grew to love Dick. And by swapping out the iTunes feed and deleting the old episodes, Maddox had betrayed their trust. Eventually, Dick made his own archive of the old podcast, which is a faithful recreation of the old website, and Maddox had made a separate iTunes feed for the old episodes. Dick and most of his fans were pretty pissed off about the stealing of the iTunes feed, while Maddox kept quiet on the situation. And things would remain mostly quiet on that front until a few months later in September when Maddox released his Dick Lies video that marked the beginning of a self-destructive campaign that would wind up turning more and more of Maddox's fanbase against him. The war between Dick and Maddox was now in full swing, but of all the mistakes he would make, The one that he made on January of 2017 would prove to be his most fatal. That was the date that he filed for the trademark of the biggest problem in the universe. With Maddox's reputation already taking a nosedive, fans of the old show began to panic about what his plans were. With the recent news that Maddox is attempting to acquire trademark rights to the biggest problem in the universe, there's a very concerning possibility here that we all have to address and prepare for. All joking aside, we are in a dire situation that threatens the entire existence of the biggest problem in the universe as we know it. Let's think about this for a second. Why would Maddox push to acquire trademark rights to our beloved biggest problem in the universe, which has already concluded its run? The answer is simple. So that he can have a monopoly as being the only legal distributor of the existing BPITU recorded episodes. If he does acquire this trademark, he can take legal action against Dick or any other entity for continuing to provide us an alternate download source. This news is extremely troubling when consider Maddox's disdainful attitude towards his fans, and his previous attempts to completely wipe out the existence of Biggest Problem in the Universe by deleting the entire show from the internet. This is a fact that cannot be ignored or forgotten. Each and every one of us knows in our hearts how special the biggest problem in the universe is, and Maddox acquiring this trademark would allow him to finish what he started by eliminating BPITU entirely, this time for good. Dick responded in June 27th of that year when he filed an opposition to Maddox's trademark claim, which is only fair since they did make the podcast together. Maddox's response to the opposition used the $20 million lawsuit as evidence somehow, which, as a now deleted user points out, Maddox, wanting to claim the biggest problem trademark, files his lawsuit as evidence. The lawsuit's statement of facts begin with, Plaintiff Uzunian launched a podcast with defendant Herrera entitled Biggest Problem in the Universe. Congratulations. You played yourself. And then once again on August 9th of 2018, Maddox lost. And you'd think that'd be the end of the story, right? Trademark claim denied, Maddox a two-time loser, the archive stays up and everything remains the same as it was before the trademark claim, right? Well, here's the thing. Remember how I said that there was a third reason why Maddox's friends might advise him to not steal the iTunes feed like he did? On Tuesday, August 14th, 2018, a few weeks ago, the few people still listening to Maddox's podcast were greeted by a surprise guest.
Hey everybody, this is Dick Masterson. You are listening to an episode of the best debate in the universe, or the biggest debate in the universe, whatever the fuck this show is called.
Dick had regained access to the stolen iTunes feed, and after Maddox had spent the past 2 years trying to keep his listeners in the dark about what he's been up to, Dick began to read off the litany of Maddox's transgressions, the restraining order, the $20 million lawsuit, posing as a reporter to try to get Asterios fired from his job, and of course, the stolen iTunes feed that Dick was once again in control of.
I now return you to your podcast, which you should unsubscribe from. This show is dog shit.
Maddox tried to get Apple to do something about it, but there was nothing they could do. The biggest problem in the universe iTunes feed, now the best debate in the universe iTunes feed, was tied to Dick's iTunes account. As far as Apple was concerned, Dick was fully in his rights to do whatever he wanted with it. So Maddox had spent the past 2 years of his life building up a podcast on a stolen iTunes feed, and now just like that, it's gone. He wound up porting Best Debate over to his Biggest Problem archive feed, once again stealing an iTunes feed from the biggest problem in the universe, but it's only going to do so much when your audience is shrinking on a daily basis. And here's the kicker. Here's how Dick Masterson figured out that he was able to do this.
During the trademark dispute, I had to gather evidence to show that people were still listening to the feed.
Oh, yeah.
So I logged into my iTunes account to see, to get some analytics from the show, right? To say, look, people are still listening to the biggest problem in the universe. It's still an active property.
Oh, sure.
It's not abandoned. So this needs to be decided on before Maddox steals it. So I logged in to my Apple ID to get some download stats on the on my archival biggest problem feed.
Mm-hmm.
I logged into the wrong account because who logs into these things? You know.
Ah.
I logged into my Dick Masterson account and I said, "Oh my, what is this?"
You got to be kidding me.
it said, "This is the best debate in the universe."
So you just kind of stumbled upon it?
Uh-huh. Because
Yeah.
he sued me for the trademark.
Yeah.
So I want to make it clear that this only happened because Maddox tried to file a trademark on our show
Yeah.
by himself.
Yeah.
This is the art of life. This is the great magnet, Sean,
Well, it's like
that I am an eternal
know.
acolyte of.
I know. I'm starting to believe.
So, had Maddox not tried to pull that shady move and trademark the biggest problem in the universe out from under Dick, Dick would have never realized that he could do this. If only Maddox could have left well enough alone, he wouldn't be in the situation that he's in. I'm not a person who believes in karma. I think it's a stupid concept fueled by confirmation bias and magical thinking. But if there is ever something that could convince me of it, it's this. The pieces just fit together so perfectly. And that's where we are today. If you missed it, check out my series on the lawsuit. Get fucked.